Good morning, Muayad and Rami's Alayan. You are the director and the scriptwriter of the film The Report on Sarah and Salim. Congratulations for the inclusion in the competition. The film is a sort of impossible love story because of infidelity of two couples. There is a Palestinian couple and an Israeli couple, and Palestinian man and an Israeli woman have a love affair. I think such a love affair is complicated enough, but placed in Jerusalem, it's even more complicated. So my question is, your inspiration for this story, where does it come from?
Thank you. Thank you, first of all. It's an honor to be here. I think the inspiration for the story came from several elements or experiences in our lives. Part of it is inspired by true stories that I witnessed myself as a young man working in West Jerusalem, of relationships between Palestinian and Israeli men and women. And the complexity of these secret relationships and the danger of these relationships, happening in the shadows, in the underground of Jerusalem, was always shocking and scary to me as a young man. I always felt that these friends or colleagues at work who were doing it are playing with fire in a way. So that was one aspect. And the other thing that influenced it was also the back then at the time when I was a teenager, and unfortunately continuously now, the many Israeli incursions into the West Bank and the invasions by the Israeli army to the West Bank, which got the Israeli security agencies a lot of reports and a lot of data and material and content from the headquarters that they invaded in the West Bank of the Palestinian Authority, that gave them access to so much data about the lives of people. I know, like, for example, Rami's high school grades, because he graduated before the invasions, are not in the Palestinian Ministry of Education anymore. They are actually somewhere with the Israeli army. Like, they confiscated so much data and papers and material from the offices of organizations, government organizations, and institutions and academic institutions in Palestine. And basically that setup of all this data and material and the access of secret service and security agencies to this personal information about the lives of people, with that other world of secret affairs that are happening in the underground of Jerusalem, is what set this whole atmosphere. And I started chatting about this with Rami, and that's where he started the writing and the development of this story world and the exploration of these characters.
And I guess also one of the things that we wanted to do with the film is to bring out the character of Jerusalem as a place, with all its complexities, political and social. And we were talking about the story early on. We thought this is not a simple love affair. This is a secret extramarital affair between a Palestinian and an Israeli. That kind of the complexities of an extramarital affair is more representative of the complexities that is Jerusalem. And it cannot be a simple relationship. The complex side of our human relationships is more what this story needs to tell.
Because I've been to Jerusalem myself, and I would never think the relationship like this would be possible. And because of this complexity we know that there is between Palestine and Jewish people. So it's fascinating that you made it possible in your film.
Actually, it is. I mean, I can say that it is possible, maybe on the outside, if you're only exposed to the news of that place, or if you don't spend enough time there and really get into the underground of the city in a way, or of the social interaction between the communities in the cities, you will not imagine that kind of affair would be possible or would happen. In fact, part of the inspiration for the story came from real life stories that I witnessed myself as a teenager, working in a cafe in West Jerusalem. Like many Palestinian young men from East Jerusalem, the first job you would take would be, any job like any teenager in the world, in a cafe or a restaurant, but most of the times on the western part of this city, because there are more job opportunities on the western part. And yes, these affairs happen and they take place, and I saw them unfold. But still, what's unique, I think, about this in Jerusalem is that there are so many barriers, and there's this very sophisticated, complicated structure that makes sure that these relationships are always hidden or secret or extremely dangerous. Like you're touching, you're playing with fire in a way. And it's not because people by nature do not connect. It's because there is a political system, unfortunately, in Jerusalem that wants to keep this segregation and wants to keep the separation between people, and also keeps the stakes higher for people to make sure that they never meet at the same end. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's a very sophisticated political system or socio-political system that is segregating people in the city. So that makes this relationship very dangerous. And this, and although it's an infidelity that can happen anywhere in the world and would still have some kind of consequences, but on a social level. In Jerusalem, it has a social level, it has a political, crazy political consequence to it. And unfortunately, in the political and legal system, one side is always, jeopardized, or is always has more to lose than the other. And it brings all questions of how should people be treating each other, and how should people be doing what's right to the other, even if you have so much at stake, and even if you might be losing a lot, or going against what's expected from you politically, socially, etc., would you stand against all that and do what's right as a human being?
Beautiful. So did you work on the script together? How did you develop it? After the film, I was thinking the characters of two women are actually very fascinating. The wife of Salim, who actually is a very strong one, who is strong enough to fight against everything. And Sarah looks strong in the beginning, but in the end we see she's a weak one, because she sort of submits to her husband's duties and everything. Was it a long time that you were developing this?
We tried different variations. So we tried different kind of characters. We were trying both to kind of make the characters as real as possible, people who are true to the location, to Jerusalem, and wanted to give each of them their own arc in the story. So that was kind of the base recipe for this, on choosing these characters. But we wanted the whole collection of the 4 characters to also to give some sort of representation of the city and kind of the various social and political aspects of the city, and how the dynamic plays out between them. So basically, it was a lot of exploration in the beginning of how the interplay between these characters are and who they can fit socially in the world of Jerusalem. It didn't. I guess we had a couple of different variations, but we pretty quickly settled on these 4, and then it became a question of how to structure the story and the script.
What about the actors? Because this is, I guess, quite a daring project for them. Was it difficult to find them and to persuade them to?
I think it was not hard, but it took a lot of work. I feel so blessed to have found
Yes,
these
you were
characters
very
and these
lucky,
actors.
yeah.
Some of them I knew already, like Bisan, Maisa Abdelhadi is
Yes.
a very well-known actress in Palestinian cinema. Adib also is a very close friend and also a very uh, lively, enthusiastic human being. He's a beautiful person. So I had them in mind already. Ishai, who played David, I
Yeah.
know of him and I know about him from previous films he worked on. He played in Palestinian films before, so I knew that he's somebody who is interested in working on Palestinian films. And I heard about Sivan from a play that she starred in about an American activist who was living in Palestine and was killed in Gaza. And this is how, in the research, working with the casting director, of course, these names came up, and we invited some, of course, a lot of people to the auditions, but it just I think
You were lucky because the chemistry really works.
And I think that's
Yeah.
what it is. I'm putting on the producer hat right now for a second also. Because we wanted two things. We wanted, of course, all the cast to match the characters in the story, which is,
Yes.
of course, for every film. But we wanted, because like you said, it's a sensitive topic and we're shooting in very sensitive locations.
Yes,
we wanted to make sure the chemistry of everybody in the cast and crew is good. So we had to kind of also look at people's of course the talent and how they match the characters, but also their ability to work in the situations we're producing in. Will be a lot of times we had to switch locations on the spot, and Jerusalem had a lot of clashes while we were shooting, and we had to kind of on the spot maneuver and figure out alternatives. So we wanted to also work with cast and crew who are able to have the right spirit to survive the kind of production.
I think the other thing that really was fascinating to me in the auditions and later on in the rehearsals and on set was that the amount of passion and emotions that they were bringing from their personal lives and experiences as people who are living in that part of the world.
Yes.
And with all the human, social and political background and ethics, morals that they themselves believe in, bringing all this to the film was fascinating to me. I now looking back at the discussions we used to have and the arguments we used to have and trying to figure out the best way to play this scene or that particular beat in the story. I learned a lot from them, and I learned a lot as a director from the discussions I had with them. The references to real life experiences and exploring whether that experience in their lives or my life was relevant to help get the best for that particular performance or that particular moment, relating to a specific place in the country or a specific experience of the Palestinian people and particular neighborhoods. For example, I remember discussing Silwan, which is a neighborhood in East Jerusalem that is a very poor and impoverished neighborhood in East Jerusalem with a lot of trouble and a lot of poverty and a lot of conflict and unfortunately injustice, which is supposedly it is the neighborhood where Salim and Bisan live in. Discussing it with Bisan, I remember, who is not from Jerusalem, but she's a Palestinian from Nazareth, was so exciting for her, and it helped her so much in understanding the character, but also her questions. And what I had to explain to her as somebody from Jerusalem helped me form a way or a language that I would use with all of them. You know what I mean? In explaining what that place feels like and what life in Jerusalem feels like. Because all the four characters are from there, but they're not from Jerusalem.
Yes.
And I really enjoyed that process. I really learned a lot from this discussion. How do you convey a place, a community, to a character or an actor that you're asking him or her to play a very dramatic part in a movie that is set in a place that they have not lived in, yet they know of, they experienced,
Yes.
but they are not from there. I think
it's very,
yeah.
very convincing, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this with us, because I was thinking how you did it. There is some extra layer to the film. It's not only love story, and not only story of Jerusalem, but as if they are individual stories of all the actors. Actually, you feel that they want to say something extra, and that's fantastic. That's the magic that it's being given to the film. And what I also very much appreciated was that your film is the tempo of the film, the pace of the film is very smartly done. I don't think there is 1 second too much or 1 second too less. Was it the magic that you did in the editing room, or did you know from the beginning this will be having this?
I think in the script already this pacing was already set in place, and the tone for the pace was already there. Samir, our editor, did magic with the pacing as well, because again, after the script has gone through the process, through the actors and the camera and everything, you still would have alterations to the pace, which the editor would have to work again in setting the pace or changing the pace at some moments for the best of the drama or the feeling of that particular beat or sequence in the film. So, but definitely the structure of what the four characters were going through was already set in the script when, and I think Rami did an amazing, crazy puzzle of and it was a challenge for me actually. Like, I think when we first had the idea, we had the idea for the setup of the two families. We had the idea for the plot and what would throw their lives away. But I did not imagine that in the development he would put the four characters in the lead, in the front. Which I think in the beginning, I must admit, I was like, whoa, where did you go with this?
Okay.
This is scary for, for a director, that's like a panic, I think.
You mean that they are equally actually
they're equally
treated,
important, they're equally in the front. The four of them have their four arcs in the film.
Yes.
Nobody of them is secondary at all.
No.
And I think that challenge, it made me a better director, I think. It really challenged me a lot to be able to work with four amazing actors, and all of them with a lot of experience, a lot of background, both in theater and cinema, and how do you navigate this way? So in that sense, I think it was an amazing challenge, and I think that I cannot imagine the story being told in a better way than that, honestly, so yeah.
No, you managed.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah. No, I was very much going to say this, essentially what you said, because the level of there's so many perspectives to the story and that experience of the story that if you take the focus on, if you put the focus on one character versus another, you already lose a lot of the essence of that story and the essence of Jerusalem in a way. So early on, it was very clear that kind of all four characters need to have their arcs and their time in the film, and then that was part of the writing and the script development. Like, how do you write the script in a way where they all get to be with the audiences equally and to have the audience experience all four perspectives of that story and story world, and make their own conclusions.
Yeah, and what's very enriching, I think, for audiences, at least I've seen many films, but this is the first time that it shows this complexity also from inside, from the human side. We are used to many political films, and there's always political from this region, but this is a fantastic job that you two did about showing us the human side of the story.
I can say something about, well, the thing is, I think cinema from Palestine or on Palestine, or even in Israeli cinema, I think there has always been the straightforward, easy, good and bad, or the other extreme of the romanticization of the situation, or if this could just happen, things will be perfect. And I think life is not that simple. Life is not like, it's not like a remote control where you click good or bad, or you just make a click and then you have this Romeo Juliet perfect, rosy, flowery situation. There are horrible things that set people apart in the first place. You don't solve this or you do not discuss this by just coming up with a narrative that is very easy and feasible for you as a filmmaker. I think it's, for me, more interesting when you give every character and every person their own argument of why they are doing this or that, and what's at stake for them individually. What do they have to lose, and what's influencing them in their decisions. I like to believe that people by nature would want to do what's right to the other. But for me, and I think in most of our films, the people are not the antagonists. The people, all of them are protagonists that are faced by a very, very sophisticated system of injustice that influences their lives and their decisions. And I think that's what we have been trying to do in most of our films.
And I think that's what you succeeded to do. And so thank you so much for this beautiful story that you brought to International Film Festival Rotterdam. Good luck in the competition and enjoy the festival. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.